Evening, friends. Moving on to volume 4 of my life. Today's episode is going to cover basic training. Early October 1985, I had actually enlisted during this over the summer of '85, but I was in delayed entry, the DEP delayed entry program. But I finally shipped off to go to basic in the first week of October 1985. Got on an airplane. I think my mom dropped me off out there. Got on the plane, flew to San Diego, California, because at that time, in that part of the '80s, there were three basic trainings or boot camps for the Navy. There was one in Great Lakes, Illinois. There was one in Orlando, Florida, which is where the girls went. There were males there as well, but it was the only one that the females went to. And then there was San Diego. I got sent to San Diego. Okay, so we were on a flight, landed in San Diego. There was a van there to collect everybody up, and they took us back to the base. We got shoved into a barracks, open bay barracks, and told to get some sleep, and that we'd be starting fresh and early in the morning. Now, the next morning, they come in, wake everybody up, and here I am. I'm thinking this is the first day of boot camp. Oh, no. No. That was called your P time for preparatory. Okay, and that preparatory time usually lasted between 5 and 7 days, and that's the time where you get fitted for uniforms, you get issued your everything that you're supposed to have. That all happens on your P time, but your actual boot camp time didn't start until after that. Okay, so the next morning they got us up at like 4 in the morning or something, and we were all walking around like zombies, walking dead. And so we go through and we get fitted for uniforms, we get fitted for shoes, we get everything we're supposed to have. You know, our Blue Jackets manual, which was like a handbook, kind of like the Boy Scout guides, but it was for the Navy. Okay. We got a Blue Jackets manual, we got some pens, we got some notebooks to take notes in for the classes that we were supposed to take. Socks, shoes, underwear, uniform, everything that we would need, and all of our personal stuff that we came with got locked up because we weren't going to need it for the rest of the time there. Okay, and like I said, we were in P days for about, I don't know, maybe 5 days or so while our company was getting formed up, and eventually we were formed into Company 212, Company 212 in October. So we actually start basic training, and basic training at that time was, I think, 12 weeks. All right. We get assigned our company commander. He was a first-class bosun's mate. His last name was Lee, and he was pretty salty. Unfortunately for him, we were a gigantic collection of retards because we didn't know how to do anything, and no matter how hard he tried, we never really figured stuff out. While they were teaching us how to march, they they were watching everybody march, and I got picked to be a squad leader because apparently I had the right size gait, the right size step. So I was first platoon squad leader for my recruit company. And recruit training at that time, it was get up, get dressed, take a shower, go to chow, have breakfast, then you go to either PT, physical training, or to a classroom setting. We actually spent a lot of time doing classroom stuff. It was not all just physical stuff. In fact, there was actually very little physical stuff. I mean, we probably did PT 3 times a week, but it was your basic daily dozen stuff and some running. It wasn't anything, hard. But a lot of classroom stuff. We had to learn a bunch of completely useless nonsense, like the history of the Navy and all this other crap. The stuff that really would have come in handy, like, hey, this is this type of ship, and this is what it does, and this is this type of ship, and this is what it does, and this is why you want to be stationed on each one. We didn't really learn much of that stuff that we could, actually come in handy. We learned general orders that would never need to know again. We learned the rank structure. That came in handy, so you'd know who you were talking to by looking at their shoulders. That came in handy. We learned about how promotions work. Things like that. But it was basically just time to get the fat off everybody and get everybody in a relatively decent shape. Now, that is ironic because when we finally did graduate from Recruit Training Command, we get shipped off to our different schools. Now, I just want to mention this before I forget about it, but my first school was actually there at the Naval Training Command, NTC, in San Diego. So it was right next to basic training. So it was like basically just go across the bridge. Because I had to go to what was called BE&E, Basic Electricity Electronics School. That was my first school, and it was over on the main side at NTC. So when we graduated from boot camp, I walked over the bridge, went to the right building, checked in. They sent me to one of the barrackses, and the guy that was supposed to be giving me my little tour, he basically said, okay, well, here's the dorm, and there's the laundromat's over there, and there's a beer machine outside of it, and here's where you can get a pizza. So all that work that they did getting us in shape, that didn't last long. Okay, that did not last long at all. All right. But yeah, as far as basic training goes, we learned to march. We had these rendered inoperable old ass M4 rifles that felt like they weighed 20 pounds. We had to learn to march with them, which was, again, ironic for the Navy because you'll never touch one again after basic training. But we learned how to march and how to do rifle drill and the 16 count manual of arms and all this other, really very useless information. Now, we did also do the gas chamber, which a lot of people, at least civilians anyway, they think that's cruel and unusual, and they don't seem to see the point in it, but it does serve a purpose. Now, for those of you who don't know, for those of you who are not veterans, the gas chamber is basically exposure to CS tear gas, okay? And the way it would work is they gave us a gas mask, and they had us put them on, and they marched us into this enclosed room. Okay, and then they popped a bunch of tear gas canisters, and they told us to start reciting general orders, and then ordered us to take the gas mask off and continue reciting our general orders so that we had to talk. We had to talk because if you're going to talk, you have to breathe. And it was to expose us to a chemical agent, to expose us to tear gas so that in a safe environment, because it is safe. Nobody ever gets hurt from that stuff. Now, you do walk out of it with snot running out of your nose, and your eyes are watered, and it hurts to breathe, and it's miserable, but it's not dangerous. And the point of the exercise was to expose us to it in a safe environment so that in case we're ever exposed to it again in an unsafe environment, like a combat situation, that we won't necessarily freak out because we know it's not going to kill us. So we did the gas chamber, and anybody that had any problems with their medical or with their, you'd get glasses if you needed glasses. If you needed dental work, they'd get you to dental and get that fixed up. It's basically just trying to get the civilian out of you, so that you can actually join the military and maybe be a functioning member. But it wasn't hard. It was easy. There was nothing really challenging about it. Now, we had plenty of screw ups and people did stuff wrong, and it was but it really wasn't serious. It was nowhere near Army training, much less Marine Corps training. But Navy training was, at least at that time, it was like not a big deal. Okay, and like I said, the only real purpose it served was to get the heavy guys down to a decent weight, or to get the skinny guys bulked up a little bit. Because that's what the thing about boot camp is: if you need to lose, you'll lose. If you need to gain, you'll gain. Because it's just enough exercise, and of course it's controlled portions, and you only get 3 meals a day. I mean, for the entire 12 weeks, we got to buy. Occasionally, got to get a Coke, maybe once a week, get 1 can soda. But we didn't get a chance to eat anything other than chow hall food. And actually, the chow hall food, we'd go in there and you'd go through the line and you'd sit down. And the minute you sat down, you had some company commander over your shoulder yelling at you like, eat it down, taste it later, move, 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 hurry up, hurry up. So you basically got like 5 minutes to eat. Okay, so you sat down, wolfed your stuff down, and then you had to get up and go. And that the people who were unlucky were the ones who went through the line first, because once they got done, they had to go outside and stand in formation and wait for everybody else to get done. So they'd be out there standing in the sun for the longest time. And around noon in San Diego, it wasn't necessarily super pleasant, especially not in the middle of a huge asphalt covered field. It could get a little hot. But yeah, 3 square meals a day. If you needed to gain, you'd gain. If you needed to lose, you'd lose. But that's basically all it was. Now, it was shocking. It was. I mean, I'm not afraid to admit I did cry because I missed home and I missed my mom. Okay, but it was never anything close to being unbearable. Okay, and I'm fairly certain that basic training is, for the Navy at least, is probably still the same way. It's nothing even close to being unbearable. Now, that being said, not everybody's cut out for it, but I think everybody that goes through it does come out of it better off. Everybody could benefit from it, but not everybody is cut out for a military lifestyle. Okay? We get through the end. We've done all the classes. We've done everything we need to do. And I actually won they'd have a couple of different awards. They'd have like an honor man that was voted on by the members of the company, and a guy named Stacy Walker got our honor man. They had an academic award and they had a PT award. Okay, and I did manage to win the academic award. I had the highest test score average, but that's only because I was not a moron and that stuff wasn't real hard. It was like mid-90s average or something like that. Okay, but and like I said, now the graduation ceremony was very majestic. They had all the companies that were graduating do this little marching maneuver, and there was stands with parents and everything sitting there. And we had to do what's called pass and review, where we had to march past the stands, and everybody's with their rifle, and the parents are all clapping. Now, I didn't have any. My mom wasn't there. My cousin Debbie, she actually did come. Because she was stationed in San Diego. She was active duty Navy at the time, so I did have somebody there. I won the academic award, so there was somebody who went, yay! But as soon as I graduated, I got my orders. I went across the bridge over to the Naval Training Command, got checked in, got assigned to a barracks. And now, the biggest mistake I made in my first school at BE&E school is I did not go home and get my car. I really should have gotten that car. Okay? Because I spent a lot of money on taxi cabs that I wouldn't have had to spend. Not to mention, as a car, well, being one of the few people that had a car, that was pretty much a guaranteed panty dropper. And I didn't take advantage of it because I left my car at home with my mom. So, stupid. All right? The BE&E course at that time was self-directed. Okay, it wasn't classroom. It was all independent study, and it was all computer. It was all controlled by a computer. You had actual books. There wasn't computer learning then. You had actual books and everything, and they had labs where you went and did practical exercises like troubleshooting and whatnot. But it was direct. You'd take a test, you'd get your results, and then it would tell you what your next assignment was. And the computer was called Fred, okay, which we used to joke stood for fucking remedials every day, because if you failed a test or failed a practical, you'd have to do a remedial and do it all over and do that module over again. And it was done in a series of modules, each module teaching you a different thing, like one about capacitors, one about resistors, one about, whatever. And then they would gradually get more sophisticated as they went. Since I had joined to be a fire controlman, I had to do like 25 modules, which was among the highest. The ETs, I think, had more. Most everybody else had less, but yeah, I think I had to do like 25 modules. And it was all self-directed time, so, that's kind of good and kind of bad, because the people who wanted to go fast could, and the people who but the bad part of it was the people who wanted to goof off could. Okay, and there was a lot of that, because you got to remember, this is 17, 18, 19-year-olds away from home for the first time. And even though basic training was men only, when I got over to the service school, the Naval Training Center, It's co-ed. Women had their own barracks. The barracks weren't intermingled, but there were women in the classes. So when you got a bunch of 17, 18, 19-year-olds away from home for the first time, they're in relatively good shape because they just got out of basic training. And, and the girls all get put on birth control right away. So there was a lot of carousing going on. If I'd had a car, I could have joined in on it. As it was, I was mostly a bystander. I did actually I had my first Navy girlfriend there in San Diego. She was also in BE&E. Her name was Amy, and she was from some town in Pennsylvania. All right, and she was a real cute little brunette girl. We had we went out for probably 2 months, which in military terms, 2 months is a long relationship. Okay. And I ended up, and actually I was there in San Diego going through BE when the space shuttle exploded. I remember being in class, getting out of class, going back over to the barracks, and the guy that was on watch at the barracks said, "Hey man, space shuttle just blew up." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're full of crap." And then I went and turned my TV on. I was like, "Oh, damn." So that's when I was in San Diego for BE is when the first space shuttle blew up, the one that had the teacher on it. Okay, but I ended up completing BE, all right, and there in San Diego. Actually, like the last 5 modules I did in like 2 days because I just flew through them, and I don't know why, because I was never particularly fast before then. Once you completed whatever the length of course that you had to do, it would give you your graduation certificate, and they'd send a notification over to the people in admin, and they'd get your orders cut to go to your next school. Now, my next school was in Great Lakes. That was for my A school. That's what your primary training for whatever job you signed up for. It's called, in the Navy, it's called A school. Well, my A school was in Great Lakes, Illinois, which is a naval station in the middle of the country, right on the shore of Lake Superior. So we'll get more into that next time. I ended up being in San Diego for, let's see, I was in boot camp for October, November, and December. Started BE in January, and believe I graduated in March. Yeah, March or April, something like that. But yeah, San Diego was fun. I mean, it was a great town. If it would have been, I would have been a lot more fun if I'd had a car, because there was a ton of stuff to do there that I never really got a chance to do. We'd hang out. We'd go to the base club, which was actually a pretty good base club. The Enlisted Men's Club in San Diego at the Naval Training Center was actually really good. It was a nice club. Spent a lot of time in there. Did a lot of damage to my liver. Let's see. But yeah, next episode we'll talk about when I transferred from San Diego to Great Lakes. I do appreciate you guys watching. Do me a favor, like, subscribe, comment. Let me know what you're thinking. If the story is boring so far, let me know. If you think it's interesting and you want me to keep going, let me know that too. I'm going to keep going anyway, but, let me know what you think. Thanks so much for following, and I'll see you next time.